The air inside the ship was cold and thin. Sharp chemical smell of burned wires and something worse filled the corridor. Red emergency lights flashed, throwing long, dancing shadows. Leo Cruz dragged his body across the rough metal floor. Each movement sent a jolt of pain through his chest. His left arm was numb and heavy. He was alone. The bodies of his crew lay around him. They were the best fighters money could buy. Now they were just broken shapes in the dark. He had seen men like Carl and Jenna take down entire security teams without a sound. They had not made a sound when they died either. His boot caught on a loose panel. He fell hard, his helmet cracking against the deck. For a moment, he just lay there, listening to the hum of the dying ship. The asterisk Oblivion's blade asterisk was a ghost. Its power was gone. Its guns were silent. He pushed himself up, using the wall for support. His right hand gripped his pistol. It felt small and useless. He had to reach the comms room. It was 20 meters down the hall. It felt like 1,000. He focused on the door at the end, a dark rectangle under the flickering red light. A sound made him freeze. It was not the groan of metal. It was a soft click like a boot on the floor. It came from behind him. Leo turned, raising his pistol. The corridor was empty, just the bodies. His heart hammered against his ribs. He was not a man who scared easily. He had built his reputation on being the most feared. But this was different. This was not a fight. It was a hunt. He moved faster, his breath ragged in his ears. He reached the comms room door. The panel was dead. He pried it open with his fingers, ignoring the pain, and crossed 2 wires. The door slid open with a grinding noise. Inside, the main console had minimal emergency power. His hands shook as he typed. He opened a channel to the general emergency frequency. Anyone listening would hear him. "This is Cruz," he whispered, his voice rough. "The asterisk Oblivion's blade asterisk is lost. They are not what we were told. They are ... relentless." He tried to think of a better word, but his mind was empty of everything but fear. Another sound, closer this time, a quiet rhythmic hiss of air, like from a suit vent. It was just outside the door. He looked up. A figure stood in the doorway. It was tall, clad in smooth black armor that drank the red light. No markings, no flags. Its helmet was a dark, featureless visor. Did not raise a weapon. It just stood there, watching him. Leo fired his pistol. The shot echoed loudly in the small room. It hit the figure square in the chest. There was a bright spark, but the armor held. The figure did not even flinch. Leo fired again and again. The sparks flashed, but the black soldier just took one slow, deliberate step into the room. Desperate, Leo slammed his hand on the console, keeping the channel open. He leaned into the mic, his voice breaking. "If you hear this, if anyone hears this, never, ever provoke the humans." The black soldier took another step. Its own weapon, a long, sleek rifle, now hummed to life with a low, rising whine. It was a sound that promised a quick and final end. Leo Cruz dropped his empty pistol. He pressed his back against the cold console. There was nowhere left to run. He closed his one good eye and waited for the noise to stop. The sky over Hope's End was a dull orange, stained by dust. Kate Dawson wiped grease from her hands onto her pants. She was under a heavy mining crawler, trying to fix a broken power line. The air was hot and dry. A high-pitched scream cut through the quiet afternoon. It came from above. Kate scrambled out from under the crawler and looked up. A streak of fire tore across the sky. It was a ship, or what was left of one. "Frank," she yelled. "Frank, did you see that?" Frank Cobb, the colony marshal, stepped out of his office. He was a big man with a tired face. He watched the fireball disappear behind the rocky hills. "I saw it. Probably just debris. That was a pod," Kate said, already grabbing her medkit from a nearby bench. "An escape pod. Someone might be alive." Frank sighed but went back inside for his rifle and a larger med pack. He did not like trouble. Hope's End had enough of its own. They took an old open-top rover. The engine coughed and sputtered as Frank drove them out past the perimeter fence. The land was all red rock and dust. They followed the trail of black smoke. They found the pod half buried in a canyon. It was a mangled piece of metal, still hot to the touch. The hatch was broken. Kate climbed up to look inside. A man was strapped into the pilot's chair. His flight suit was torn and burned. One side of his face was a mess of cuts and dried blood. One of his eyes was gone. His left arm looked wrong, bent at a bad angle. He was breathing, but each breath was a shallow, painful gasp. "He's alive," Kate called down. "Just barely." Frank climbed up to see. He looked at the man's face, then froze. Recognized him. Everyone in the outer systems knew that face. It was on wanted bulletins and news feeds. "The most dangerous man alive, that's Cruz," Frank said, his voice low and hard. "We need to call this in. The bounty on him could keep this colony running for a year." "We can't just leave him here to die," Kate argued. She was already cutting the straps holding him in. "It won't last an hour." "I was a med tech, Frank. I can't just watch a person die." Frank looked from the dying man to Kate's determined face. He cursed under his breath but helped her gently lift Cruz out of the wreckage. The man was heavy, a dead weight. They laid him in the back of the rover. As they drove back towards the colony, the sun began to set. The long shadows made the rocks look like monsters. Frank tried to raise the colony on his comms unit. All he got was static. "That's strange," he muttered. They reached the colony's main gate. It was quiet, too quiet. The usual evening lights were off. The whole settlement was dark. The power was out. Frank and Kate carried Cruz into the small medical bay. Kate hooked him up to a monitor and started an IV. Frank went to his office to check the main systems. A minute later, Frank came back. His face was pale. He pointed to the security monitor. The screen showed the view from the perimeter camera. It was pointed towards the canyon where they found the pod. "Look," Frank said. Kate looked. The screen showed the darkening landscape. There, at the very edge of the camera's range, stood a single figure. It was dressed in solid black armor. It was not moving. It was not setting up a camp. It was just standing there, facing the colony. Frank zoomed the camera in. The figure did not react. It simply stood, a silent black statue against the red rocks. "How long has it been there?" Kate asked, her voice a whisper. Frank checked the log. His blood went cold. "The system timestamp says it took that image over an hour ago," he said. "Right after we lost power," he looked from the unconscious Leo Cruz to the frozen image on the screen. The figure had not moved an inch. It was just waiting. The silence was the worst part. Hope's End was a tomb. No power hummed through the wires. No lights shone in the windows. The only sounds were the nervous breaths of the 30 colonists huddled in the main hall and the relentless wind outside. Frank Cobb checked his rifle for the third time. "They're playing with us," he said to Kate. "They cut the power. They cut the comms. Now they just stand out there." Kate kept her eyes on Leo Cruz. He was still unconscious on a cot, his chest rising and falling in a weak rhythm. What do they want? Before Frank could answer, a scream echoed from the east side of the compound. It was cut short. Frank and 2 others ran towards the sound. They found Old Man Pete near the water reclamation unit. He was on the ground, dead. There was no blood. His face was frozen in a look of pure terror. His tool belt was missing. "They took his hydrospanner," one of the men said, his voice shaking. "Why would they do that?" Back in the hall, Frank told Kate what happened. "They're not just killing. They're gathering tools. They're methodical." Suddenly, the emergency lights flickered on. A loud alarm blared for 2 seconds, then stopped. The lights went out again, plunging them back into darkness. It was a cruel joke. A young woman named Lisa started to cry. "They're in the systems. They're inside." Frank gathered everyone. "We can't stay here. We're targets. We need to use the terrain." He pointed to a map. "The canyon narrows here. We can set up an ambush. Use the mining charges." They moved quickly and quietly. Kate and another colonist carried Cruz on a stretcher. They set up positions behind large rocks overlooking a tight pass. Frank placed the last of their explosive charges at the narrowest point. They did not have to wait long. A single figure in black armor walked into the canyon. It moved without sound, a dark shape in the dim light. It did not look left or right. It just walked forward. Now, Frank whispered into his hand radio. The canyon wall erupted. A wave of rock and dust crashed down, swallowing the black soldier. The sound was enormous. For a long moment, there was only the rumble of settling stone. A quiet cheer started among the colonists. They had done it. They had beaten it. Then 2 more heat signatures appeared on Frank's handheld scanner. They were not in the canyon. One was coming from the north ridge. The other was approaching from the south, directly between them and the colony. They were surrounded. Frank looked at the scanner, then at the relieved faces of his people. His heart sank. He had just shown the enemy exactly how they would fight. The sound of metal on rock came from the north ridge. A black helmet appeared over the edge, looking down at them. Frank met Kate's eyes across the rocky outcropping. They had no more charges. They had no way out. The figure on the ridge raised its arm. It was not a weapon. It was a hand, pointing directly at Frank. Then it shifted its aim, its finger moving slowly until it was pointing at Kate. The pointing finger felt like a physical blow. Kate froze, her blood turning to ice. Frank did not hesitate. He fired his rifle at the figure on the ridge. The shot sparked harmlessly off the rock. The black soldier did not flinch. It just kept its arm extended, its focus entirely on Kate. A low groan came from the stretcher. Leo Cruz was awake, was open, blurred with pain, but aware. He saw the black armor on the ridge, saw the terror on the colonists' faces. "They are Reapers," he croaked, his voice a dry rasp. "They do not stop. We can't fight them," Frank yelled, ducking as a single precise shot from the south kicked up dirt near his foot. It was a warning. The core crews gasped, trying to sit up. "In my pod." A data core. They want it erased. Everyone who saw it must be erased. Kate rushed to his side. "A weakness. Do they have one?" Cruz nodded weakly. "Their armor. It links to their nerves. A feedback loop. A strong EMP. It fries the link. It paralyzes them." He coughed, a wet, horrible sound. "But it has to be big. Very big." Kate's mind raced. She looked at Frank, her eyes wide with a terrible idea. "The primary power regulator for the whole colony. If we overload it." ... Frank stared at her. He knew what that meant. The regulator was in the central control hut. An overload would create a massive electromagnetic pulse. It would fry every unshielded circuit in the colony. It would also kill anyone standing too close to the blast. It was a suicide bomb. "It's the only way," Kate whispered. Cruz struggled to push himself up. "Give me a gun. I will do it. I brought this here." His body shook with the effort. He was a broken man offering the only thing he had left. Frank looked from Cruz to Kate. He saw the young mechanic who had stayed to help a dying mining town. He saw the families huddled behind the rocks. He saw the black soldier on the ridge, still pointing, waiting. He made his choice. In one swift movement, Frank Cobb shoved Cruz back down onto the stretcher. The mercenary was too weak to resist. Frank then grabbed a small, red-handled lever from his gear belt. It was the manual overload trigger for the colony's power grid, a last resort safety measure. He looked at Kate, his face hard and sad. "Get him and that core out of here. Use the old service tunnel behind the rocks. It leads to the secondary landing pad. There's a scout ship there." Kate's eyes filled with tears. "Frank, no. ... Double quotes. Tell them what we did here," he said. His voice was steady. "Tell them we fought back." Before she could argue, Frank turned and sprinted from cover. He ran not away from the colony, but towards it, towards the central control hut. Shots rang out from the southern position. Dirt exploded at his heels. He was a running target. He did not look back. He reached the control hut and slammed his shoulder against the door. It burst open. Inside, he saw the main power regulator, a large humming unit. He did not stop. He ran to it. The red lever held tight in his hand. He saw the black soldier from the south approaching the hut, its weapon raised. Frank Cobb took a deep breath. He thought of his home. He slammed the lever home. A high-pitched whine filled the air, building fast. The lights on the regulator flashed from green to a blinding red. The whine became a scream. Outside, Kate saw the hut's windows flash a brilliant, painful white. Then everything went dark and silent. The silence was absolute. The EMP had killed every electronic device. The world was dark and quiet. Kate's ears rang. She pushed herself up. Leo Cruz lay beside her, his body rigid for a moment before relaxing. The two black soldiers were on the ground. One twitched. The other was completely still. The pulse had worked. "We have to go," she whispered, her voice sounding strange in the dead air. She pulled Cruz to his feet. He was weak but could walk. They stumbled towards the service tunnel entrance, a hidden hatch behind a large rock. Kate pried it open. The darkness inside smelled of damp earth and metal. They moved through the narrow tunnel as fast as they could. Cruz leaned heavily on her. After what felt like an hour, they saw a sliver of starlight. They emerged at a small, rocky landing pad cut into a cliffside. An old boxy scout ship sat there, a relic from the colony's early days. Kate got the hatch open and helped Cruz into the co-pilot's seat. She slid into the pilot's chair. The control panel was dead. She prayed the EMP's effects were fading. She hit the manual ignition. The engine coughed. Lights flickered on the panel. It was working. She lifted the ship off the pad, rose unsteadily into the night sky. As they cleared the cliff, she looked down at Hope's End. It was a dark scar on the planet's surface. Then, a new shape blotted out the stars above them. It was massive, a dagger of black metal. A warship. It had no name or marking. It was just there. It had been waiting. The asterisk, iron verdict asterisk, Cruz said, his voice hollow. The warship did not hail them, did not demand their surrender. It ignored their tiny scout ship completely. Instead, a section of its hull glowed red. A moment later, a beam of pure energy lanced down. It struck the center of Hope's End. The ground turned white-hot. The rock and metal of the colony vaporized. The light spread, consuming the entire settlement in a wave of fire. Kate watched, unable to breathe. Frank, Lisa, everyone. They were gone. Erased. The asterisk, iron verdict asterisk hung in the sky for a moment longer. Then it turned smoothly. Its engines glowed blue. It did not head for the jump point out of the system. It moved inward, towards the core worlds. On their scratchy long-range scanner, a single message filtered through. It was not for them. It was a report. Contamination at Hope's End has been sterilized. The asset and the core are en route to secondary location. The Reaper unit is expendable. Kate understood then. They were not important. The Reapers they fought were just tools. The mission was all that mattered. The core, the secret. Leo Cruz stared at the view screen. The planet below now had a new, glassy crater where a town once stood. You see, he said. The fear was gone from his voice, replaced by a terrible emptiness. I provoked them. They did not just come for me. They burned everything I touched. They will do it again. Kate did not answer. She set a course for the nearest neutral port. The data core felt heavy in her ship's computer. Somewhere, in a quiet room on a busy world, a screen lit up. It showed a star chart. A new target was selected. A new name was written on a list. The work was not done.